My dear readers, in the dark tableau of modern autocracy, the demise of Alexei Navalny is not merely a footnote. It is a stark, glaring indictment of the Putin regime, an entity so ensconced in its own venality that it views dissent not merely as a nuisance but as a pathogen to be eradicated. Navalny's untimely death in a desolate prison, miles from the embrace of justice or humanity, is a crime so brazen, so replete with the arrogance of unchecked power, that it demands not mere condemnation but a resounding global outcry for accountability. Navalny was no ordinary opponent. He was the embodiment of the Russian spirit at its most indomitable, a man who, armed with nothing but the unyielding force of his conviction and the incisiveness of his intellect, dared to challenge a despot. His forays into the heart of Russian corruption were not mere critiques, but acts of war against a system so dystopian that Orwell himself might have blanched at the prospect. That he did so, knowing the likely cost to himself, elevates his actions from the realm of the political to the pantheon of the heroic. To describe Navalny's final chapter as a mere incident, a happenstance tragedy, as the Kremlin's machinery of misinformation would have the world believe, is an affront not just to the memory of the man, but to the very notion of truth itself. This was no accidental misfortune, but the culmination of a long, deliberate campaign of intimidation, suppression, and ultimately elimination, orchestrated at the highest levels of the Russian state. The regime's response to Navalny's death, a masterpiece of obfuscation and callous indifference, is as transparent as it is insulting. It reveals not just a profound disrespect for human life, but a deep-seated fear of what Navalny represented. The idea that Russia could aspire to more than the kleptocracy it has become, that its people deserve more than the perpetual cycle of repression and despair that has been foisted upon them. The international community stands at a crossroads in the wake of Navalny's death. This moment calls for more than the usual platitudes of concern and calls for investigation. It demands a unified, resolute stand against the tyranny that took his life. To do any less is to be complicit in the perpetuation of a regime that views the very concepts of freedom and democracy as existential threats. Navalny's legacy must not be one of martyrdom, but a clarion call to action. His courage, his refusal to yield in the face of overwhelming odds, should galvanize all who cherish freedom to stand in solidarity against the forces of autocracy. His death should not spell the end of resistance, but serve as a potent reminder of the cost of inaction, of the peril we court when we allow despots to trample upon the rights of the individual with impunity. Let us not mince words. The Kremlin's orchestration of Navalny's demise is not merely an act of political expediency, it is a declaration of war against the very soul of Russia. In their zeal to silence one man, they have unwittingly amplified his message, transforming him from a solitary crusader into a martyr for the cause of liberty. This is the alchemy of tyranny. It seeks to extinguish dissent, only to find itself fueling the flames of resistance. As we stand witness to this travesty, let us remember that every attempt to stifle the truth only serves to scatter its seeds wider, ensuring that the ideas for which Navalny fought will find fertile ground in the hearts of those who continue to seek justice. The Kremlin may have silenced one voice, but in doing so they have awakened a chorus that will not be so easily stilled. Let us therefore channel our ire, our outrage, into a concerted effort to challenge and dismantle the mechanisms of repression that silenced Navalny. Let us honor his memory not with silence, but with a renewed commitment to the ideals he sacrificed everything for: justice, transparency, and the unassailable right of every person to live free from the yoke of tyranny. In doing so, we not only pay tribute to his legacy, but affirm our collective humanity in the face of brute inhumanity.